Formula One is on the edge of a massive internal war, because the FIA is now studying a move so extreme, it could wipe out years of development overnight. We're talking about cutting up to 50 points of downforce, the same amount that was added to save performance, now being removed to fix a crisis that's causing cars to lose huge speed in the middle of straights. Teams are furious. Drivers are divided. And behind the scenes, this decision could completely reshuffle the grid, changing who wins, who loses, and who disappears in the next era of Formula One. Because this isn't just a technical adjustment. It's a desperate attempt to fix a system that might be fundamentally broken. At first, this didn't look like a disaster. It looked like control. Formula One had a clear plan for the future. Lighter cars, cleaner energy, better racing. Everything was designed to move the sport forward, not backward. But then something unexpected showed up, not on track, but inside the simulations. The original designs for the new cars were far too slow. Not slightly off, not something you fix with small tweaks. We're talking about a massive drop in performance, several seconds per lap compared to the current cars. And in Formula One, that's unacceptable. So the FIA made a decisive move. They added around 50 points of downforce. More grip in corners. More stability. More speed. And just like that, the numbers improved. The cars looked competitive again. On paper, the problem was solved. But here's what nobody fully understood at the time. They didn't just make the cars faster. They made them heavier in resistance. Because downforce doesn't come for free. It comes with drag. And drag is like an invisible force pulling the car backwards every time it tries to go fast on a straight. At first, this doesn't seem like a big issue. The cars still reach high speeds. They still look fast. But underneath, something is changing. Because that extra resistance forces the car to work harder. And working harder means using more energy. Now imagine trying to sprint while someone is constantly holding you back. You can still move fast, but you burn through your energy much faster than expected. That's exactly what these cars are doing. They are built to be fast, but they are constantly fighting against the air to stay that fast. And this is where the real problem begins to take shape. Because the energy system inside these cars has strict limits. Half of their power comes from electrical energy stored in a battery. And that battery doesn't increase just because the car needs more power. It stays the same. So now you have a car that demands more energy, but doesn't have more energy available. And that imbalance creates pressure. Not something you see immediately, but something drivers feel every single lap. Because suddenly, they are not just racing other cars. They are managing a system that can run out at any moment. They have to think constantly. When to push. When to hold back. When to attack. When to save. And that changes the entire nature of racing. Because instead of going flat out, drivers are calculating every move. They are asking themselves one question over and over again. Can I afford to push right now, or will the car punish me for it? And that question is where everything starts to fall apart. And this is where the problem stops being hidden and becomes impossible to ignore. Because what drivers started feeling on those straights wasn't just higher energy usage. It was a sudden loss of power. Right when they needed it the most. Right in the middle of full speed. No warning. No gradual drop. Just an instant cut. And this is where everything begins to break. The system reaches its limit, and when it does, the car changes completely. This is what's known as superclipping. A moment where the battery runs out before the straight is over, and the car suddenly loses a massive portion of its power. We're talking about speed drops so big that cars can lose up to 50 km per hour in seconds. Now picture that in a race. Two cars, flat out, chasing each other. One suddenly slows down. The other keeps accelerating. The closing speed becomes brutal. And the reaction time, almost nothing. That's not just frustrating. That's dangerous. And it already created situations where drivers were caught completely off guard, forced into split-second decisions just to avoid contact. But here's the part that makes this even worse. This isn't random. It's predictable. It's built into the system. The cars are designed with a power split, half combustion, half electrical. But the battery has limits. Hard limits. And once it's empty, the performance drops instantly. So drivers are no longer just racing each other. They are racing their own energy. They have to think constantly. Do I push now, or save? Do I defend, or risk losing power before the straight ends? Do I attack, or wait? And that changes everything. Because Formula One has always been about instinct. About pushing to the absolute limit. Not about holding back. Not about calculating every second. Not about wondering if the car will suddenly lose power at the worst possible moment. And this is where frustration begins to turn into something bigger. Because the sport already tried to fix this. They made adjustments. They reduced how much energy could be deployed. They tweaked recovery systems. They tried to smooth the power delivery. On paper, it helped. The drops became slightly shorter, slightly less extreme. But they didn't disappear. The problem is still there. Drivers still feel it every lap. And that's why the tension inside the paddock is rising. Because when you fix the symptoms, but not the cause, the issue never truly goes away. And this leads to a much more uncomfortable question. What if the problem isn't just the system? What if the entire concept behind these cars is flawed? Because if a Formula One car cannot go flat out on a straight without losing power, then something deeper is wrong. Something structural. Something that cannot be fixed with small changes. And once that idea starts to spread, everything changes. And this is the exact moment where everything inside Formula One starts to fracture. Because once you accept that the problem might be structural, the conversation changes completely. It's no longer about small fixes. It's no longer about adjusting numbers. It becomes about undoing decisions. And that's exactly what is now happening behind closed doors. The FIA is seriously studying a drastic reduction in downforce, between 20 and 50 points. A move that would almost completely reverse what they did just months ago. And that's where the anger begins. Because for the teams, this isn't just a technical change. It's a direct threat. Think about it. Every car on the grid has been designed around a specific aerodynamic philosophy. Every wing, every surface, every tiny detail has been optimized to extract performance from high downforce. It's not just a setup. It's the foundation of the entire car. Now imagine being told that this foundation might be removed. Not adjusted. Removed. Suddenly, everything you've built becomes less valuable. Your strengths disappear. Your advantages fade. And the teams that were behind might suddenly catch up. That's why the reaction is so strong. Because this isn't just about solving a problem. It's about redistributing performance across the grid. Winners could become losers. Midfield teams could become contenders. And the entire competitive order could shift almost overnight. But here's where it gets even more intense. Not all teams are against it. Some are quietly supporting the idea. Because for them, the current system is not working. They are struggling with the balance, struggling with energy management, struggling to extract consistent performance. For those teams, this change is not a threat. It's an opportunity. A reset. A second chance. So now you have two sides forming. Teams that want stability. Teams that want change. And both sides have strong arguments. Because on one hand, stability protects investment. On the other, change might be the only way to fix the system. And right in the middle of this conflict, the drivers. Because while teams argue about performance, drivers are thinking about something else. What it feels like to race these cars. And that's where the tension becomes even more real. Because drivers are the ones dealing with the consequences every lap. They are the ones managing energy instead of pushing flat out. They are the ones experiencing those sudden drops in power. They are the ones adapting to something that doesn't feel natural. And that's why many of them are pushing for bigger changes. Not because they want chaos, but because they want control. Control over the car. Control over when to push. Control over their own performance. And this is where everything connects. Because the proposed downforce cut isn't just about fixing energy. It's about giving drivers that control back. But at the same time, it takes control away from the teams that have mastered the current system. And that's why this situation is so volatile. Because there is no solution that satisfies everyone. Every option creates winners. Every option creates losers. And every delay makes the problem more visible. Because with every race, the same pattern repeats. Drivers managing. Cars losing power. Moments of unpredictability. And a growing sense that the system is being stretched to its limit. Which leads to one final realization. This isn't just a debate about downforce. It's a turning point. A moment where Formula One has to decide whether to protect what exists now, or risk everything to fix what comes next. And once that decision is made, there's no way to undo it. And this is where the consequences stop being theoretical, and start shaping the future of Formula One itself. Because if this downforce cut actually happens, it won't just fix a technical issue. It will change how the cars behave, how the drivers race, and ultimately, who wins. Less downforce means less grip, and less grip changes everything. Through corners, the cars will feel lighter, more unstable, more unpredictable. Drivers will have to fight the car more, not just guide it. Mistakes will become easier. Control will become more valuable. And suddenly, raw driving skill starts to matter in a completely different way. But here's the twist. That sounds exciting, until you realize what else comes with it. Because less downforce doesn't just affect drivers. It affects tires. It affects strategy. It affects how close cars can follow each other. And that's where things get complicated. Imagine trying to stay close to another car through a fast corner, but now you have less grip than before. You slide more. You lose time. You struggle to stay within attacking distance. So while straights might become more consistent, corners could become more difficult for close racing. And that creates a new balance problem. Fix one issue, risk creating another. But here's where the bigger picture comes into play. Because this isn't just about how the cars feel. It's about how the entire grid reshapes itself. Teams that built their advantage around high downforce concepts could suddenly lose their edge. All the work, all the development, all the fine-tuning becomes less effective. And teams that struggled under the current system might finally find performance. That's the hidden impact. This change doesn't just level the field. It reshuffles it. And that's why the reaction has been so intense. Because no team really knows where they will land after this shift. Some could fall. Some could rise. And no amount of simulation can give a perfect answer before it happens. But here's the part that makes this even more critical. Timing. This change, if approved, is aimed for the next cycle, not immediately. And that delay creates a strange situation. Because teams now have to make a decision without full certainty. Do they continue developing their current cars, knowing the philosophy might change soon? Or do they start preparing for a future that hasn't been fully confirmed yet? That uncertainty spreads across everything. Design decisions. Budget allocation, long-term strategy, even driver confidence. Because drivers are not just thinking about the next race. They're thinking about the next era. Will their driving style still work? Will their team still be competitive? Will the car finally allow them to push the way they want? And all of these questions are still unanswered. But here's where everything connects back to the core issue. This entire situation started because the sport tried to balance two things that don't naturally fit together.